Hello, everybody. So today is another frustrating day in the market. It is a red market all over. The Middle East tensions are not getting better, but it's surprising, as someone who follows MSTR a lot, MSTR is doing very well. Bitcoin is doing very well. We are witnessing perhaps a change towards a risk-off asset for Bitcoin. Case in point, of course, is the crypto fear and greed index. We're at a 28. This is the highest we've been in maybe 3 weeks, and this is under a macro backdrop, and like I said, geopolitical backdrop that is really, really, really bad. The Middle East is not getting better. The tankers are not going through the Strait of Hormuz. Oil, of course, is way up. People are worried about the effect of oil and the effect that oil is going to have on inflation. And the market, of course, recovered a little bit, but you see, it still looks deep red, right? It opened super, super red, recovered a little bit, but just people are worried. But, I think the market may be realizing that if this continues, if this situation in the Middle East lasts, say, months, maybe worse. If it does, there is one thing that I think Bitcoin is smelling, which is printers will go burr, because these kind of stalemates are very, very expensive. This is the type of geopolitical tension that can bring in money printing with a T, money printing in the trillions. So this actually could be very, very bearish for money supply, and whatever is bearish for money supply is extremely bullish for Bitcoin. Hence, perhaps a change in the sentiment to a 28. We're getting closer and closer to a neutral stance on the Fear and Greed index. And if you look at Bitcoin itself, we are firmly at 70,000. Every morning there's a market scare, it drops back to 69, and then it shoots right back up, because the market, in my view, if you ask me, the market is smelling a little something here. So I want to talk about, of course, MSTR and stretch really, really briefly. If you note MSTR, we are down a little more than IBIT. We're actually slightly, ever so slightly, right, but slightly underperforming IBIT. We're towards the end of a week. It's safe to assume that MSTR is ATMing on the common pretty hard right now, hence that underperformance. But if you look at stretch, we're definitely still trading at 100. This is pretty darn amazing. This is Thursday, so this is the fourth day of all-in ATMing on stretch. Yesterday marked the highest volume on stretch, and the volume on stretch keeps growing. I want to share this tweet right here from Roxom. If you look at the light-colored chart here, the light-colored bar here, you can see we are up only to the point that the ratio now between MSTR and STRC daily volume is nearly a third. Not quite, but nearly a third, and we are steadily expanding the volume on stretch. Of course, the more volume there is, the more shares get traded, the more ATM is possible on stretch, which is pretty outstanding, and I am so curious to know how much Bitcoin was bought thanks to stretch this week. And my guess is going to be more than last week. It's going to be a lot. So I expect perhaps underperformance for MSTR, the common, today and tomorrow, because he's probably going to have to ATM a lot to keep that ratio of 3 to 1. 3 times more ATM on MSTR than you do ATM on stretch. That's, I think, the good long-term ratio that sailors should aim for. Note some success of stretch adoption in 2 different realms. The first success of stretch adoption, of course, is the stretch stablecoin, APYX. We cannot access APYX in the US, but I guess we can have a broker in the US and buy STRC stock, preferred stock with a broker. But outside of the US, APYX could be, for a lot of people, the only form of exposure they can get to stretch. And if you look, the total holdings is 255,000 holdings of STRC stocks by the APYX protocol. This is steadily rising, and this is rising very fast. We also had another quite great piece of news, which is you have other Bitcoin treasury companies, including Stripe, for example, adding stretch preferred shares on their balance sheet. You may remember a few weeks ago, I was rejoicing that he had an energy company, like a battery, electric battery company, adding stretch to their balance sheet. 10% of their funds they had added to stretch, 10% of their treasury. There was another company, by the way, that had nothing to do with Bitcoin, who also added Stretch. This is yet another instance of a company that is adding Stretch, but it's a Bitcoin company who's adding Stretch and who's finding it compelling. So we have both Bitcoin companies and non-Bitcoin companies who are adding Stretch to hold their treasury cash in their balance sheet. And of course, if you follow this channel, I believe over a very long term, every company will be at some point a Bitcoin-focused company, right? I believe treasury, I believe money is moving towards Bitcoin, and so at some point there will be a day where most companies own Bitcoin, but that's in very long term. That's very long from now, and of course the fact that these companies are compelled to buy Stretch, which is a preferred stock instrument, well, that's a much easier sell to your CFO. That's a much easier sell to the CEO if you're the CFO, and that's why we could see Bitcoin adoption by many different types of companies via Stretch and not via holding public keys or private keys and owning Bitcoin by itself. The last thing I'll say about Stretch's appeal, of course, is Saylor's tweet. Yesterday, Saylor tweeted that the VWAP, right? So the volume weighted average price of Stretch is 99.93 all-time high. My guess, give it a few months, my guess is that the volume weighted average price of Stretch will be 100 in a few months. And then Saylor will really have achieved the Santi stablecoin. The Sharpe ratio is also an all-time high. The volatility is an all-time low, 2.5%. This is going to keep trending lower. This instrument, as it is ATM, this instrument is getting more and more attractive by the day. Saylor just needed to find the sweet spot of the yield, which was 11.5%. That seems to be the sweet spot right now. This success story continues. Even though the stock price, of MSTR, sometimes people just tend to just look at the stock price to say a narrative and have a narrative. The narrative is really about what's going on under the hood. And what's going on under the hood of MSTR right now is nothing short of amazing, especially when you consider, now what is in the Middle East, what is really a dark gray swan. It's really a dark gray swan. If it continues, I will qualify the situation in the Middle East as a black swan, right? It's really a dark gray swan, and we've had a lot of dark gray swans. So anyways, performance is really awesome. This was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.